I think you need to think through. I think there's strategy to anything. There's strategy in food source. Like, you need to ask yourself, what am I going to eat? When you're buying a bunch of seed, if you're not going to use it, why have it? Sure, if you're going to grow medicinal herbs, that's great if you know how to use them. If you don't, what are you doing? It's put your money on something else. Same thing with food. If you're not going to eat it, why store it? You need to store what you eat what you store, so you're rotating. It doesn't ever become redundant. Well, it's the same thing with seed. Questions are that I would ask myself is why, first off, why are you saving seed? Why are you gardening? Are you gardening to save money? Are you gardening for food security, to be independent? Just because you feel good in the garden? Or are you gardening to be like preparation or survival, for canning, for fresh food all season long, for a hobby, food saving, better tasting food, to preserve seed stock? Sometimes if you want to build your seed stock first, then there's a little different reason. You can have a different strategy on what seed you plant. How much space do you have? That has to do with what seed you grow. For instance, I know Glenna was going to show y'all some pictures of some of our vertical gardening. There you go. I could have saved myself some breath. But anyway, we can leave that up for a few minutes. Just if you want to write some of those things down, they're just thought-provoking to kind of take you through the process. I'm going to show some pictures, and then we'll come back to that. I just want to blow through these, Chris. I'll just tell you next. I don't know if Glenna showed. Y'all can say yes on one she showed, but when Grace and I moved here from the 300 acres in Arkansas back in '04, we came to an 1,100 square foot apartment that was at ground floor, but as it was on the side of a hill, so we did have an apartment below us. So as we're on the deck of the apartment right here, we grew vertically from down 12 feet below. Some of the stuff, like right there, I don't know if you can tell your plants, but the plant right there on my shoulder is cantaloupe. Now, I don't know if you've ever grown cantaloupe vertically, but it's possible. It's like the Lord has a sense of humor. It's like most people rationally see a plant growing on the ground and see a big fruit and a little spindly vine, and they're thinking, there's no way that vine's going to hold something growing vertically. But when you trust that vine, once you point it up, it goes. You don't have to help it. It's like any vine. A watermelon vine's like that, pumpkin, any of it. But when you trust that vine to grow strong enough to hold the fruit, it does. But it doesn't until you do. When it grows on the ground, it stays weak. And a ground growing vine will not grow strong enough to hold a cantaloupe. But when we did that, we had cantaloupe growing up 20 feet. And it held the cantaloupe. We have some pictures where you can actually see the cantaloupe on them. I don't know if we included them in here or not. Well, anyway, that's basically showing what we did. We just took the rail of the fence. We got what's called hog panels. They come in 16-foot lengths. They're 50 inches wide, 16 feet long. We cut them in half and just wire tied from the rail up to the roof in kind of an arc like that. Those buckets are 5-gallon buckets with a hole drilled in the bottom of them. We had tomatoes growing out the bottom. So anyway, go back to the other picture, Chris. So as you can see, that's later in the season. And that basket we have right there, it's got carrots, green beans, tomatoes, long cucumbers, beets. All that is just one day's harvest. So keep going. This is from the other end. The blueberries on the right in pails. And then that's cucumbers growing on this end. And it was the cantaloupe on the other end with green beans in between. Keep going. Yeah, that's from the outside looking in. Did Glenna show you all these pictures? Well, this one you can see all the tomatoes. We had tomatoes in little 5 foot tall cages that we just put in place with T-posts. But the point being, when you're going to grow food, I mean, it's most people could find excuses not to do anything. I try to look for the one reason why to do something. And I'll tell you, for me, it's kind of hard to listen to excuses. It's, uh, like I said, a lot of people can find an excuse why not to do anything. Hey, you can see me actually sitting up there in the rail on the right, but okay, go to the next one. That's another look at all the stuff that was in that basket. It's we got like 4 different kind of peppers, but we had 150 square feet. Go ahead. Now this is the picture of the house we have in Brookside right now. We had very little garden, so I grew. Now those are the beginnings of cantaloupe plants growing on our little patio fence railing. Okay, click. That's cucumbers growing up side of a fence. We just had hardly any space to grow much at all. I think that's some vertical spinach growing on the right there. Keep going. Now it's tomatoes and cucumbers growing. We had a rock garden there, and we scraped the gravel off 6 inches deep and put in a 10-foot box right there, and we're growing all that stuff up. It eventually grew. The tomatoes grew way up onto the roof of the garage. That was last year. Okay, keep going. That was it. So my point being, when you're doing seed strategy, is don't be limited by anything. That was less than 150 square feet. If you have very little space, then you want to pick seed that you can grow vertically. It's like the cantaloupe. Obviously, I would think on cantaloupe that you wouldn't want to grow the kind that get 15 pounds. You'd want to stay within limits because the frame that you have them growing in may not hold the fruit. The vine will, but what you have the vine growing up, will it hold it? When like if you get 5 or 6 of them on one vine, that can end up being on the bigger ones, could end up being 75 pounds. Well, a lot of the trellises or the things you have them growing on may not hold it. But a cantaloupe plant normally takes 120 or so square feet growing on the ground. Growing vertically like that, it takes 4 to 6 square inches. And you can put them real close to each other and then utilize the rest of the space you have in a bed right next to it. So maximize on vertical when you got limited space. If you've got plenty of space, then there's no need to. It's less energy just to let the thing grow on the ground. But getting into seed strategy, other things to consider are the seasons. Most people, they're overly concerned and dominated by the fact they want heirloom seeds. Well, as you can see in the multiple page handout that we've given you, I've given you a handout of my personal seed strategy list. Did y'all get a copy of it? Did you get it? It's an Excel file printout. Anyway, it's a good reference point to have. In that thing, I put in there the company we got it from. There's one column that tells you if it's open pollinated, hybrid, or what. I keep track of the days to maturity, how much it costs, how much of it I have, and the last column is the box I have it in. As I shared before, I keep all of my seed in little Ziploc sandwich size resealable containers. And I have those numbered, and I put them in numbered boxes just so I can keep track of everything, because I've got 2 pallets of this seed. But I use quite a few hybrid seeds. I use the right tool for the right job. In my strategy, I like to use my good garden space as finishing ground. I don't have just a spread out garden like this room. I have raised beds, and I like to utilize greenhouses and do the first 4 to 6 weeks in a greenhouse when plants don't need a lot of room. I don't give a lot of room to them. I only give them real estate when they deserve it or when it's called for. So in a raised bed with your prime soil, you just use that as finishing ground, and you can end up getting 3 to 4 crops a year out of that soil when you plan and strategize right. So for me, when I want quick turnaround and maximum food for the space, I want the shortest season possible. Give you for instance, with some bush green beans, which are some of the quickest food you can get in the spring. You can get a hybrid that'll mature in 42 days, where the heirloom equivalent would take 60, 65 days. If you were having to eat beans and rice and that kind of stuff in the winter, that that extra 18 to 25 days of early fresh vegetables in the spring would make a huge difference. I mean, that gives you fresh food 3.5 weeks earlier. So for that instance, if you'll notice on there, I've got some green beans in there that mature in 42 days. Well, you can't get that in heirloom. You get it in a hybrid. There's nothing wrong with a hybrid. It's not like a GMO. It hadn't been genetically altered. It's just been standardized over 20 to 30 generations. Do any of y'all know the difference between hybrid or GMO? I mean, have you looked at it? Would you like to know? I mean, an heirloom is something that when you plant it, it gives you back exactly what you planted. It's the same thing over and over and over. A hybrid, when you plant a seed from it, you will get results. You just don't. It's probably not going to be exactly like the plant you took it off of. It'll be any one of previous 30 generations. Hybrids come about through a process, and I'll give you a simplistic example. If you take a field of 1,000 stalks of corn, a seed scientist will have a criteria for, say, 10 different things they're looking for in a plant. Farmers like plants that maximize return. So some corn may give 2 ears return, others may give 3. Well, if they want to maximize, so they would pick out of that 1,000, they'd pick the 10 that had 3. They would pick the 10 that had 3 that matured all at the same time, and then they would start looking for disease resistance and such. And then the ones that would take growing closer together. So they're maximizing on space, they're maximizing on harvest, they're having it all mature at one time to where it can be harvested standard. Where a lot of corn, it might be ready anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks apart. So if you do that 20 to 30 times, you end up with a very standardized crop. And that's what a hybrid is. Nothing has been genetically altered. So there's really, as far as eating it, your body still knows what to do with it. It's just been standardized. And you can, I used to have a seed research scientist working for me in a business I just sold last year. She worked as inventory control, and she shared with me that with a hybrid, you can actually reverse engineer it. You can take it back through the process it went through in a reverse manner and end up with a lot of the biodiversity you started with. When I heard that, it kind of undemonized the term for me and made me feel a whole lot better about my strategy that I've been using. But when you take a corn plant and start putting some DNA in it from some freaking grasshopper or something, which is what they do with some of this GMO stuff, I mean, you're messing with God's creation. And I believe at some point you're going to come to a place where your body just doesn't know what to do with it. It's going to be like a round peg in a square hole, just kind of like Well, I don't know. I've been told that like hydrogenated oil, it's been altered to such a state that once it goes into your body, the only way you can get it out is by cremation. So I would rate some of our GMO crops are like that, and that's why diseases is running rampant, and even people like vegetarians that think they're eating real healthy stuff and they're eating soy products, but you know, if it's a GMO thing, I don't believe I don't believe that it's healthy and that it'll keep going. So anyway, I hope that made some sense, and it gives you a feeling for being okay with the vertical. So right tool for the right job. If you look at my seed list, I've got bush beans that are hybrid. I've got early corn. Same thing. I've got some corn in there that matures in 56 days, where normal corn will be 85 to 110 days. Strategically speaking, I've got corn. There's a blue and a pink hoppy corn. They're heirloom, but they are extremely drought resistant. They have a really long tap root, and so they're a strategic pick. They're hard to find. It's kind of it's a seed that is not vastly produced, and so to get it, you have to order it early in the season. Um, Vining tomato. There are tomatoes that truly grow vertical, just like a vine. You don't have to train it. Most tomato plants, you have to kind of train. They will grow up, kind of like the pictures I showed you, but we have to work at it and kind of time to a post or whatever. But there is a hybrid um, tomato seed that will grow vertically. I don't have the name of it right now. Likewise, I just found a vertical spinach this year. I don't even have the name of it. I haven't got the seed yet. We're going to harvest seed from the plants we have growing. I went to a nursery that's close to us. I don't know, Grace, what's the name of that nursery? Excuse me? Yeah, Soil Service on Troost. Yeah. That anyway, I wouldn't mind knowing the name of it myself. But I don't know if you can picture spinach is normally a cool weather crop, and so you got to grow it in the spring and the fall. But growing vertical, plus it's a summer plant, loves the heat, and one plant just turned into this huge bush that's just running amok, and I really like it better than regular spinach. The leaf is a little thicker, but it's a smoother velvet leaf that it's really interesting. So I've got to get that. 7-top turnip seed. I want to really make a point on seed as far as strategy goes with that. I used to have a 5-pound bag that I used in demo when I talked about seed, but we couldn't find it this time. When you go to the store and you buy a packet of seeds, you normally get, like in 7-top turnip seeds, you get 125 seeds in a packet for about $2.25. But if you refer to the seed count list that I gave you and look at turnip, you'll see that a pound of turnip seed has 190,000 seeds. Well, when you start looking at bulk seeds and you go to SH Shumway where you can buy things in bulk, a pound of seed only costs $5 of this. So, I mean, do the math. What would you think? $2.25 for 125 seeds or $5 for 190,000? So this bag that I normally have as a demonstration is a 5-pound bag. It's 960,000 seeds that I spent $25 on. So for about 10 times a packet, instead of 1,100 seeds, I ended up with nearly 1 million. And so when I'm talking strategy and seed purchases, I mean, this really amplifies the the value of thinking through what you're doing. But to prove the point even further of having knowledge of what you're doing, I take half a pound of this same seed. It's a 7-top seed. It's a hybrid. So remember, it's not evil. The purpose of the hybridization of this one, it does not grow a turnip. It only grows the greens. So you get true turnip greens out of it. But because it doesn't grow a turnip, it never knows when it's done. As long as you keep cutting off the greens, it keeps growing them. So what we did in Arkansas, we had 150 chickens, and we had it in a half-acre fenced-in area where it was free range. Half an acre is plenty for chickens to forage on. But it protected animals, wildlife from getting to them. But during the winter, the fall and winter, we would sow half an acre, and it only took half a pound, which is what, 108,000? That's about 95,000 seeds. And we sowed and planted half an acre, and we fed 150 chickens their primary food off the greens of these turnips all winter long for $2.50. Now, in the middle of the growing season, a few years ago, that wasn't a big deal. But if you make notes of that for the times we're coming into, and you do that, and then, of course, chickens have to have calcium, so you store up what's called oyster shell. You can get a 50-pound bag of oyster shell for about $6 at a feed supply store. For 150 chickens, 2 or 3 bags of that last you a couple of years, because you just put out about a half a pound every 10 to 14 days, and a chicken by instinct will eat just what it needs for the calcium it needs to supplement itself with. But those 2 things right there will feed it. I mean, the turnip greens growing in decent soil carries all the iron, trace minerals, and stuff that a chicken needs. And it's crazy. As when you start looking into things, the right tool for the right job, what you can do just through simple purchases. But the main thing it's having the knowledge. When I started yesterday, I told you that if you're in a place where you can't do much right now, you can say, well, I don't have land, I don't have this, I don't have that. Well, then while you don't have, do what you can do and be gaining the knowledge. It's key and pivotal, so that when God gives you what you do need, you can walk it out in action instead of having to take the time to learn all these things, or as doing like I did. I'm always bent towards action. I take after Michael Masterson's process. He's the one that wrote the book Ready, Aim, Fire. He's talking about don't wait on the perfect knowledge or having to study everything out like a scientist or whatever. The guy that takes off like a shot out of a gun and doesn't worry about being perfect but has action and learning on the fly, be his teacher, will always end up ahead. Well, I did that for 20 years, and hopefully by sharing with y'all and many other people, I'm hoping to kind of shorten that process. So, but I guarantee you this thing with 7-top turnip seed is one of those things. I mean, it's just a phenomenal tool. But if you dissect some of the other seeds in there, and just the documentation of the process I've gone through, and you copy it, it can really be a great tool. You can go down through there and you can pick the seeds that you need to reorder. You can just have a strategy of your own, but you can be strategic about why you're growing it. But there's just another couple things to mention. There's if you're wanting to feed fish, like grow fish, there's an algae that you can get a starter for called duckweed. It'll grow in a bathtub, it'll grow in a pond, it'll wherever you want to put it. But in correct temperatures, it'll double in mass daily, which is crazy. It's high in protein. You can skim it off the top of the water every 3 or 4 days, and freeze it or dry it, either one, and you can feed it to fish, or you can even eat it. It's safe for human consumption. People can live off of it too. But it's unbelievable to have a plant mass that'll double every 24 hours without feeding it. I mean, it does that off of the nutrient from the fish.